Okay, so in the previous tutorial, we have seen how we can create a function for spawning harvesting tools for each worker. And now let's see how we can stop this harvesting after a period of time and maybe numerically deplete the resources from each and every individual natural resource type, right? Where the worker is responsible for harvesting, right? Okay, so we can do that actually by going to the worker base harvesting function, right? So first let's create a float to denote the harvesting duration. So after surpassing that duration, we have to stop harvesting, right? So I'll keep it as maybe I don't know, maybe like 5 seconds for now, and move it to the setup and make it as instant editable. Okay, so now by using this harvesting duration, we can set timer by event to trigger a timer after this duration, right? Also I'll promote this timer as harvesting timer handler, right? So we can explicitly handle this timer as well. And as the event, I'll create a custom function called end harvesting, right? So after this duration, this timer will trigger this specific event, and whenever this specific event is get triggered, first we have to hide our spawned harvesting tool, and we have to stop playing the random montage, and we have to set the character movement type back to working state, right? Back to the working state, and yeah, and then since we are done with this timer, it's better if we can clear and invalidate this timer as well. Otherwise, for the concurrency issues, sometimes this can be buggy. So in order to prevent these sort of stuffs, it is the best practice to always clear your timer, right? So we clear the timer as well, and yeah, so this should stop our worker for being continuously harvested, right? So if everything works properly, now our worker should stop after 5 seconds. So I'll first disable these two things, and let's first check whether our lumber is able to stop harvesting within 5 seconds. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, you can see after 5 seconds the worker is not harvesting the resource, as well as that harvesting tool has been hidden as well. Great. And then actually we have to deplete the resources from the from that specific natural resource, right? So in order to do that, maybe I'll create another integer value at the worker base called max max harvestable units, and this should be an integer. So let's say the max harvestable units are 50, and this worker should harvest this sort of harvestable units from the respective current target resource, right? So in the current target resource, let's say with the if it is valid or not first, and if it is valid, you should harvest these sort of max harvestable units. So I think first we have to go to our natural resource base, which exists where natural resource base, yeah, so here, and here let's create a function for harvesting our resource, right? Yeah, so let's create a function to harvest, right? And this should take an input called maybe harvesting amount, right? Okay, so this can be 50, like we pointed out over here, right? And also make sure to make this as instantiable and assign it to a setup category. And yeah, and a specific worker can harvest this amount of resources, plus a natural resource should have higher than this sort of higher than the harvesting resources, right? So maybe I'll create another variable called available resource units, right? So this basically determine what are the available number of units at this specific natural resource, right? So I'll keep it as instant editable, and as the default value, maybe let's say it's 100 units, right? So at most a worker can harvest 2 times this resource, right? Because in the first time he will harvest 50, so the resource will be get depleted. Likewise, in the second time he will harvest the remaining 50 resources. Okay, so in order to determine that collected amount, first we can get the minimum amount of these two variables, and let's say this is the collected amount, right? So this is basically the collected amount, because sometimes let's say if we have not rounded numbers, maybe let's say the maximum available resource units are 80 and the harvesting amounts are 50. So when the second time the worker is harvesting, the remaining available resource units are 30, right? So he can't actually harvest 50. Therefore, he can at most collect that 30 available resource units. So that's why actually we are taking the minimum of these two variables, right? Otherwise, there will be a wrong calculation. And after determining this collected amount, we have to reduce that collected amount from these available resource units like this, and we have to set the new available resource units as follows, right? So this is reduce collected units. Use collected units, and then and then we can simply, we don't need the sequence. We can simply return the whatever the collected amount that we get over here. So collected amount, right? Okay, and then then we can go to the worker base, right? And at the end of the harvesting, we are checking whether we have the current target resource, and if it is valid, we can harvest it. And we are harvesting this amount of resource, next harvestable units, and maybe I will promote this to a variable called units harvested, right? And for the testing purposes, maybe let's try to print this units harvested amount. Okay, so let's simulate it again. Okay, so more worker is moving towards the resource. We start harvesting, and here you can see the 50 get printed, which means we have harvested 15 amount of resources. Okay, so likewise, actually you can randomize the harvesting amounts for these workers and all, but for now maybe I'll change some of those stuff for the demonstration purposes. So under the blueprint, on the characters, worker, and the farmer. For the farmer, maybe I will make the max harvestable units as 30, and maybe for the miner, I'll make max harvestable units as 20. Okay. First, you can customize the natural resource types as well to change their respective resource availability. For example, let's say under these stones, maybe the available resource types can be 200, right? Something like that. So you can change those values accordingly as well. And now you can see the instance that has been responsible, that with respect to these stones are now having available resource units as 200, and for the trees they are having 100 available resource units, because we haven't changed that. But you can even change those stuffs as well, right? And for now, let's keep like this, and maybe let's reactivate these resource buildings and try to simulate it again. Okay, now she's harvesting. So now you can see they are printing at 30, 20, 50, something like that, which means that they are successfully harvested the resources from their current target resource. Okay, so that's how we can start harvesting, and maybe later on we can implement some features to bring those harvested resources back to the resource building and start processing, and after that move towards to the resource again, right? So like it's a circular procedure that happens again and again. But yeah, let's see how we can implement such complex features in future tutorials. And yeah, so thank you for following this.